Hi from Bonn. The topic our speakers will be speaking on is vaccination and fairness. The speakers work for One, an international lobby and campaign organization that works to fight extreme poverty and preventable diseases. First, Lilith, a youth ambassador for One, will report on the Vaccination Alliance Gavi. Then, Clemens, One's policy and advocacy manager in Germany, will speak about the health systems in developing countries and the fairness of vaccination distribution.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Lilith and Amina, for taking time to be part of the project. This cannot be taken granted on Sunday evening. The topics deal with the SDG 3, the SDG for health. Yeah, we're excited. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to introduce to you the work of Gavi and also the connection from the work of Gavi together with One, the organization at which we are part of as youth ambassadors. But first of all, I want to talk a bit about Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. And Gavi, what does it stand for? Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization. So what does Gavi do? It was founded in 2000, so not too long ago, and it is the worldwide biggest distributor of vaccines. It focuses on low and middle income countries, so to distribute vaccines into those countries and to provide them with vaccines, so to improve the health of the people living in those countries. Examples for vaccines against which diseases they provide those medicine is against measles, polio, yellow fever, pneumonia, and cholera. So you see there are a lot of illnesses that can be prevented by vaccines. So illnesses that are in developed countries already not existent anymore due and or thanks to vaccines. They not only give the vaccine material to those countries, but they also help with education and advocacy, because it's not only important that they have the resources, but even more important that they are educated and that they understand how important it is and that they are not skeptical of not letting their children, for instance, getting vaccines because they think it might be dangerous. So the goal of Gavi and countries contributing to Gavi is that every child has the WHO recommended life-saving vaccines, and it increases the effectiveness and efficiency of immunization. So it really controls that the immunization is not done only once, for instance, in vaccines against illnesses which need several times in the life circle to get vaccines. So they really try to make a sustainable impact and to increase the overall health of especially children. They have a youth empowerment approach that can be seen in this picture or this diagram. They think that it's really, really important to promote youth and to empower youth, as, for instance, more of half of the population in low and middle income countries are below 25 years of age. So if we approach this generation and we empower this generation, we really have a long life impact, and we will hopefully increase the health of the future generations. So they help the youth to promote the environment. They also access youth-friendly sexual reproductive health and rights services. So as you see, also educational things and educational programs. They help that youth can participate and can voice their opinion. And often they are a bit more open-minded and welcoming, for instance, to new medicine and also vaccine approaches than, for instance, the older generation, the more traditional ones. And they also create opportunities for economic independence, so that at one day this young people can nurture and also provide the health for their own children. They strengthen youth clubs so that they can exchange and empower each other, and they are stressing gender equality, as in those countries in which Gavi is active, the gender gap is often really large. So with those approaches, with this cycle, they really want to have a sustainable impact. Here you see the countries in which Gavi is most active at the moment. And they also base their approaches on three kind of strategic objectives. So they say, okay, we want to supply those countries and all of the youth, all of the people living there with the useful and the vaccines that they need. They want to adjust the costs to the people's income. So, for instance, you cannot sell vaccines in developed countries at the same amount as developing countries because also the money has different values. So, it just should be adapted. And they promote innovation so that the products have a high quality and can be increased in quantity and quality as well. Yeah, in this video, we will try to show it to you, and in this you can see the things that Gavi already reached. So they have an annual progress report in which they publish some figures, how many people could be vaccinated due to their help and what they reached due to their work. Because also countries that provide them with money, of course, want to see that the money also has an effect and helps people all over the world. So let's show you the small insight. Yes, so as you could see, it's quite important that the money is given to Gavi and that countries as well as institutions or intergovernmental organizations, also like the EU, provide a special amount of their fundings to organizations like Gavi. Especially at the moment, Gavi is in high discussion regarding the COVID approaches because it's quite a debate who gets the vaccines first and if also countries can have access to those vaccines who might not be as rich as other countries to buy it immediately. So yeah, it's quite a year for Gavi to be in the media as well. And I hope I could have given you a small insight into the organization, that you understand the approaches that they have and the way how they work. But of course, there's much more to learn about it. So just feel free to look at their website, look at YouTube. They also have a lot of videos there, and yeah, try to promote or also support this organization.
Yeah. Thank you very much. That was quite impressive, the work of Gavi. Do you think there are more chances for Gavi to get a higher importance in the future?
Yeah, I think that they already increased in over the last years. They have increased, and also the importance of them has became more important and also more seen by many more countries as they reach the first impacts and improvements. Also, the countries got aware that the work is important. So the money that they get from fundings increases also, especially now in this year, as with the COVID, everyone looks at vaccination, and there is a lot of discussion about are vaccines good or not, or how important are they. Also, we are tackled at the moment, so we see how important vaccines are. So I already see in this year that the focus on Gavi has increased, and we as One, or also as youth ambassadors of One, got a briefing with one of the leaders of Gavi. That was quite interesting. And also we are, as lobby organization, talking to politicians from Germany, like in my case, as I'm youth ambassador in Germany, but also at EU level. And we are promoting to increase the fundings, for example, from the EU Haushalt, so the EU money for the next 7 to 8 years, to also put more in organizations like Gavi. So as always, money is the key in many cases, and with more money, more vaccines can be distributed equally all over the planet, what is very important. I mean, at the moment, we see that none of us is safe as long as all of us are safe, because we cannot just separate and build borders. All of the world are affected by viruses, and we see that it's quite important to make everyone healthy in the world. So I guess that this maybe the COVID opened some eyes. I'm not too optimistic that it opened as many eyes as it should, but hopefully it can improve the work a bit.
Yeah, I hope so. Okay. Thank you very much for this presentation, and thank you for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. And as I said, like, just look at the Gavi homepage, or also at One Youth Ambassadors at the moment. There's also a call for new youth ambassadors for the next year. So just feel welcome to look at the homepage and find out what else we are doing. And maybe you can also join us and support the work of Gavi and many other interesting organizations all over the world.
Hi, I'm Clemens. I'm the Policy and Advocacy Manager with One in Germany. And I would like to talk to you today and with you, Birdal, today about vaccine access and vaccine equity, because currently we do have one of the biggest challenges we have had in a very long time. That's the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is a challenge for us here in Germany, here in Europe, and here in the Western world, so to speak. But this is as much of a challenge for people in the global South, because obviously they have the same challenges as we have, just that they don't have the financial means. Their countries don't have the possibility to fund huge programs like we have here in Germany and in many other countries in Europe. And also they don't have the ability to easily buy up all the vaccines that might be available soon in the future. So this is why I would like to talk about this with you, and also about the effects that obviously the pandemic has on global health more widely.
So what's the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic in the health systems of developing countries?
Yeah, so as I've just said, I mean, obviously the COVID pandemic is not only an issue for developing countries, or not only for us. It's a global pandemic. That's why it's called a pandemic after all. But there are many challenges we don't have, or we don't have as strongly. I mean, we do have many challenges with that. And when we talk about hospital beds, when we talk about ventilators in hospitals, we might experience these challenges here in Germany as well. I mean, people in Italy have experienced this before. But at the same time, we're in a very comfortable situation. We're in a situation that many other people are not. And this is that we have many of these things. We have many hospital beds. We have many ventilators in hospitals. Maybe not always enough, but many more than people in developing countries have, or in the global South. And first of all, we need to see, I think, that we all thought, who are working in global development, that this pandemic will hit the global South very hard. And for some parts of the global South, this has been true. I mean, look at Brazil, look at many other Latin American countries, South American countries. They've been hit very hard. But if we look onto Africa, for example, these numbers haven't been as bad as we would have thought they are. At the same time, they are still pretty bad. And one of the biggest challenges we have is the testing, obviously, because we have a rather good idea of how many people do have COVID-19 or have the coronavirus in Germany, for example. But still, if we look at schools, or for example, we often see that there's actually many more people who are asymptomatic. And now in countries, and I would like for the rest of the talk to mostly focus on Africa, because that's where I know most about it. So in Africa, there's very few testing capacities. And this obviously means that there's very few people with COVID-19 who will actually be diagnosed with COVID-19. So this is a huge challenge. And this also means that the virus can spread more easily, probably because people won't notice soon enough that they are infected with the virus. Obviously, there's another second bigger, probably even bigger challenge to this, and this is that how people live. People that are not as rich, people that are actually pretty poor, might be living in slums, and this means they live closely together. And obviously, this means that diseases can spread there more easily. This goes for COVID-19, but this goes also for other diseases. And this is actually, I think, the most important part about the COVID-19 pandemic when we talk about health systems, that we need to make sure that other diseases won't be spreading because we are only focusing on COVID-19, because we're only focusing on the coronavirus. I think we need to make sure that we still focus on all the other diseases as well, and then we also improve the health systems in Africa. Now, there's one very good thing about diseases, about epidemics in Africa, and this is that, as sad as this is, they have more experience with that than we, they have more experience with such diseases than we have. I mean, just look at Ebola, for example, that has been detrimental for West Africa. This has been a big thing in the Democratic Republic of Congo until earlier this year. And this means that the people there actually know how to manage this. And this is something that Chancellor Merkel also said. This is something where we can actually learn from them, because they are doing a pretty good job. They've been much quicker than we are here in Europe in making hygiene rules, in getting lockdown, in implementing lockdowns, and people are actually more likely to obey to this, to obey to these lockdowns. And I think this is very good, and this might be one of the reasons why the virus isn't spreading as quickly in Africa or in African countries. Now, that being said, and I'm coming back again to the testing, there are countries where there's a lot of testing. For example, Ghana has had more than 30 million tests already in June. And then there's countries with very few tests. For example, Sudan apparently only had a couple of hundred tests being made by August or in the summer. So there's big differences. And obviously these big differences, not among these two countries, but more generally, are also in implementing rules like lockdowns, like hygiene rules, but also obviously obeying to this, because after all, it's a huge continent and people behave very differently. And I mean, we see how differently people behave in Germany or in Europe. And obviously it does make it very tricky.
Yeah. The EU, the UK, the US, and other countries are buying up vaccines already now. What can the global south do, assuming that they don't have financial means to buy vaccines for their entire populations?
I think this is a very important question, because if we look at the EU, who's doing this for Germany and for all the other EU member states, at the UK, the US, and we can go on, right? Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, they've basically bought zillions of, well, millions, probably billions of vaccine doses against the COVID-19 vaccine. And this is very smart, obviously, because they're negotiating with all major companies who are producing vaccines. And this means that once the vaccines will be on the market, they will get them, and also they ensure that no matter which vaccine will be first on the market, these countries can get it. Now, it is important that everyone gets a vaccine at some point, or everyone who wants one gets the vaccine, because, I mean, you probably know the discussions about herd immunity, right? We need to get at least 60 to 70% of the population, of the global population this time, to be immune against the virus, to be able to properly fight it and beat it. And therefore, we need obviously a lot of vaccine doses, but we also need to get them everywhere, because we are in a global world. We're all interconnected, right? And it is really important not only for us to be immunized against the virus, to be vaccinated, but for everyone else as well, because else we cannot travel. The people everywhere else in the world cannot travel. This also has obviously impacts on the on global supply chains, on the global economy, and this is a big deal. And as long as only we in Europe, for example, are vaccinated, or maybe everyone, but in one country is vaccinated, this would still mean that the virus could still spread from this one country, from this one continent, or from all the places that are not immunized. The virus could spread again and again, and we don't know yet, but we assume that we must assume that the vaccine will only spare us for a couple of months, years, maybe, from the virus, and will not immunize us forever. So obviously, it is important that we beat the virus properly, and that this also means that we are only safe, that everyone is only safe when all are safe. And this is, I think, very important. Now, what can the Global South do? This is a very good question, because after all, this is mostly about money, and this is what is lacking. And therefore, and this is really good, and this is important, the WHO, the World Health Organization, together with a couple of other organizations, among them the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Wellcome Trust, as well as health organizations like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, or Global Fund to fight tuberculosis, malaria, and HIV/AIDS. They all have been setting up a, how would you call that, an initiative, so to speak, that are working on getting money and ensuring that people get vaccinated, can get vaccinated in the Global South as well. So what they're doing is they're collecting money from donors, from Germany, for example, from the EU, from many other countries, so that they can go out to the vaccine producers, that they can go out to the pharmaceutical companies and negotiate deals with them to buy vaccines as well. Obviously, this is a slow process, because the UK can go out to, I don't know, AstraZeneca or Pfizer or Sanofi, to one of the big pharma companies, and say, hey, here, we want to buy X million vaccine doses, and we have all the money that we need for this, right? And now this initiative I've been talking about, it's called ACT Accelerator. This needs to get the money first from the donors. So countries have been paying there. Germany has been giving 100 million euros. That's pretty good. The European Commission, for example, has been giving 500 million euros. That's also very good. Others have been giving a little bit. So all in all, they have, I think, about $2 billion now for buying such vaccines. And now they can go out to vaccine producers, or to potential vaccine producers, and buy this. And they've made a first agreement. They've gotten a pretty good price, and they are able to get 300 million vaccine doses as soon as the vaccine made by AstraZeneca is out on the market. Now, obviously, with 300 million doses, you don't get far in a world where you have more than 2 billion people living in the Global South. This is a huge challenge, and more needs to come there. And this means, obviously, that countries need to give more money, donor countries. Also, maybe, very rich people could do this, or other organizations, foundations. But this is, this is one thing that I think we all need to do, or all our governments need to do for the global south, because as I said, we can only fight this virus together.
Do you think that in future, maybe because of the damages through the coronavirus, that donations from Germany, for example, that was like 100 millions, will they decrease? Do you have that? Is there any fear of that?
Not in the short term. That's the good thing. So we know for next year there will be similar funds, and we know, and this is really, really good. So for Germany, Germany has been a leader on this. The German government is great on this. So the pandemic hit the world, hit Germany. And what Germany was or is doing, has been doing, is increasing funds for the development cooperation. This is really good. And Germany has been increasing this big time, right? They've been giving 10-12% more to the development ministry than it was supposed to have this year. For next year. So Germany has been adding 1.5 billion euros for 2020 and the same amount for 2021. So this is great. This is, I think no other country has been doing this on such a large scale. So Germany is really good. Now at the same time, it's not only these 3 billion euros together, but it's also all the other money that Germany is currently spending for companies in Germany, for people, for the Kurzarbeit, for example. And this means that Germany needs to take a lot of debt on itself. And this obviously means that it might need to spend less money in the years to come, so after the pandemic. What this means for global development and for the German development budget. So there I'm not as positive, but I think we see that I think the pandemic shows us that we live in an interconnected world, a very global world, where everything is connected and everyone is connected globally. And thus I think we need to continue doing this, because I mean, as long as there's extreme poverty in the world, I think we need to go on with this, because the ultimate goal should be to win over extreme poverty, and then we can think about cutting the development budget.
What would you suggest other governments should be doing next to Germany? For example, in the European Union, are there any similar tactics like in Germany, that they are still spending enough money to prevent this global pandemic?
The EU is actually doing a good job in this. Now, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has been speaking up on this from the beginning, basically, or from what was it, April maybe this year, on the needs for global, we call it vaccine equity, that everyone has access to the vaccine, to the vaccines once they are on the market, that everyone can get it for a price that is affordable. Now, obviously, we could afford more for a vaccine here in Germany, or our health insurance is good, than a state could that hasn't as much money. So prices might differ, and this is also what I referred to earlier when I talked about the ACT Accelerator and them being able to negotiate better prices for vaccines for developing countries. So the European Commission, or the European Union for that matter, has been leading on this as well. I mean, especially when it comes to vaccine equity. The Commission has freed up 400 million euros, another 100 million euros later. As I said, 500 million euros they've spent just for the ACT Accelerator, for the vaccine module there. This is really, really good. There's obviously different entry points to this. And for example, France is taking a different route. France is maybe not putting as much money into this, but is looking rather on the policy side, and is preparing to make moves later on, once the vaccine is on the market. I think this also makes sense, but more could be done. Now, obviously, there's one country, one very important country that is doing too little, and that's the US. I don't think this is too surprising. I mean, this is maybe my personal opinion, first of all, but they haven't been taking part in these things altogether. And I mean, they have done what President Trump always said, that's make America great again, America first. And basically also with the vaccine development, they've been focusing on something that's been coined vaccine nationalism, right? So get the vaccines for Americans first. And so US could and should certainly do more. And I really hope that President-elect Biden, once he is the president, will do more on this. And I'm pretty sure he will, and also push vaccination. And put also, I mean, obviously this needs to be policy-wise, but this also needs to be financially supported. And I think then we can expect a big move in early 2021.
How is the organization working in those areas exactly? What is one doing? What are one's purposes and actions?
So, I mean, obviously we are a campaign organization. We other than other development or many other development organizations, we have projects in the field, as one would say. But we are ensuring that donors are putting the money into the right places. And we're also ensuring in our offices on the African continent, we are ensuring that money is spent wisely by the governments in place. So what we're doing is in this context, we are doing two things. And the one thing refers directly to vaccines, and this is the vaccine access. And this is, we have set up something we call the vaccine access test, or in German, the Impffairness test, where we look at what countries are doing. And we have scorecards, 1-pages on every major country, and also 1-pages on every deal or contract that is being made between a country and the vaccine producer. And we look at how fair this is. So this includes, is there any mechanism that a certain amount of this is being passed on to the least developed countries? Is there any part, that is being spared for others in needs? This looks at what's the policies in place in a certain country. Do they make sure that only the most vulnerable people, as well as the people working in hospitals, etc., get the vaccines first, and then in a second round, basically, the same groups of people in other countries can be vaccinated, and only returning then back to Germany, for example, and immunizing the rest of the population. But we also look at the transparency. So what do we know about the contracts? What is the problem? Are they sharing these informations with others as well? This is very important, and we have a ranking, and there we see that some countries and some companies are really on top. So Germany is, in the better half, but not really on top. And then we have other countries that are pretty much on pretty low. For example, the US. Now, this is not really surprising. We also see that the European Union is pretty much high up there. This is all good, but we also show that, as well as they are, no one is yet in what we would call no one has the green light if we're in a traffic light system, so to speak. So Germany and the EU, for example, are in the yellow area, while others are still in the red area. This is what we're doing on vaccine access, and obviously at the same time we are advocating for this. So we're talking to government, we're talking to parliamentarians, especially right now in the budget negotiations going on in the Bundestag. And on the other hand, we also try to make sure that other organizations or organizations working in global health more widely get the funding they need. Because as I said, we need to ensure that people in the global south will not get another disease now, because the only thing that we don't need right now is a second disease, right? It's a second epidemic everywhere in the world. And so every global health organization is obviously focusing on COVID right now, because it has so many implications. I mean, if I want to go to a hospital because I have a fever or so, they will first check on me whether I have COVID-19. This makes sense, but this means that they need to have the material, that they need to have the knowledge to test me on COVID-19, that they need to have the laboratories to test me on COVID-19. And this is with any other health intervention as well. People who have HIV/AIDS, for example, they need to get treatment on a regular basis, but also the people who give this treatment, like the doctors or the nurses, need to have need to have masks, for example, need to have gloves maybe that they otherwise might not have. I don't know, but they need this equipment as well. So we also try to make sure, especially now in the budget negotiations in the parliament, that COVID money is not taken away from other health interventions, but that the COVID money is on top. And again, I think the German government has been doing a very good job on this so far. I just hope it will be similar in 2021.
So one is doing quite impressive jobs. How can the normal citizen act? How can we act, and how can we raise our voices?
This is a very good question, because we are working a lot with activists, with supporters, and obviously what I guess would motivate you most and what motivates me most is going out and doing something, right? Is showing things, and this is something we cannot do right now because of the pandemic. So right now we need to, do something we call online activism, and this is nice to a certain extent, but it's not the same as meeting people in real life, right? And this is a challenge, and we do have a couple of good things. This is obviously what we have always said is, for example, supporting our petitions, for example, that one can sign online on our homepage. This is also that we try to look into other things people could do. This is obviously sending emails or tweeting or sending pictures that are being used online. This is sending, how do you call that, snail mail letters, or like old-fashioned letters on paper to politicians, to parliamentarians, or to the chancellor. There are many things that we try to invite people to do. At the same time, what we've also always been doing, or for many years now, is we have the Youth Ambassadors program. So we have young activists and do activities with them. That sounds a little weird, but do like help them to raise their voices, or help them to raise your voices over a year on issues of global development, and prepare you for meetings, try to engage you with politicians, and also give you the platform for being able to do this. And yeah, I mean, this, to make a little advertisement now, maybe this is something where we are calling for applications for the 2021 cycle, and you can sign up on our homepage, one.org, for this. And yeah, maybe the one or the other is interested in this, and this would be a nice thing, because then you have the chance to do something on it for 1 year, and we are building you up as global development advocates.
Yeah, and you're quite successful with that, right?
Yes, I mean, we have some, well, big names, one would say, probably. So Luisa Neubauer, or Kalarisma, both pretty well known for their Fridays for Future engagement, for example, have been won youth ambassadors. Ali Chan has been a youth ambassador with one. So there's a couple of rather big shot names, right? And I think this is also a good platform to start raising your voice, and also to maybe practicing some things that you might, use elsewhere in your life later on. Because talking to strangers, talking to politicians, might be an uncomfortable situation in the first place, but once you get comfortable with this, you notice how much of a change this can make, and you actually start loving it, I think. At least I do.
Yeah. Great. So thank you for this great input. Thank you for your time. And hopefully the new cycle of the youth ambassadors will be a very successful circle, and you will be more successful in the future.
I hope so. And well, so thank you for taking your time and for listening to me. And I mean, we do have the elections coming up next year, right, for Parliament, and there will very likely be a new chancellor. And so there will be a lot of change, and obviously this will be the focus of all our work next year. And I think there is a big highlight, and there's loads of things to do. So I'm hoping to see some of you next year in the Youth Ambassador program.